Day 711 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is a super quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 388,000 military personnel losses, which represents an additional 810 in the past 24 hours. Then as for hardware losses, 2 tanks, 13 APVs, a whopping 31 artillery platforms as well, which is truly an asymmetrical loss rate daily figure when you compare tank to artillery losses today, which ultimately may become a regularity for Russian losses due to them simply having less tanks to spare. Then heading across to the map and starting out in Russia today as Ukrainian drones hit another Russian oil refinery, this time in Volgograd, causing the refinery to shut down. And this event now marks the 7th strike this year, severely cutting Russia's petroleum exports, but also cutting Russia's domestic usage as well. So unfortunately for this oil refinery, it was just recently upgraded at a price tag of over 130 million US dollars. And is in fact part of Russia's largest refinery in the southern region, processing 14.8 million tons annually. So this is truly what real strategic military hits on energy infrastructure looks like, and yet they sometimes call the country of Russia a gas station with nukes. But if the armed forces of Ukraine keep this pace up, Russia will be just called the country with nukes. And even then, it's questionable about the upkeep and the capability that it actually has in this department, given that almost every other department or Russian military sector has been anything from dismal to just plain embarrassing. Then we'll briefly move across to Belgorod as several districts in the region were in blackout due to what was described as a technical failure on the power grid. Then moving more east into Russia as Ukraine's military intelligence agency reported information they had regarding a firearm attack on Oleg Stegachev, a Russian Tupolev Tu-95 strategic aircraft pilot. As Stegachev, stationed at the Engels Air Base, was known to be involved in missile strikes on Ukraine, and currently the condition of his health is not yet clear. Then moving across for a moment to Bryansk, as suspected Ukrainian drones were noted in the skies over the oblast, with these events now seemingly becoming a daily systematic campaign of drone sorties from the AFU to keep the Russian skies, military targets, and air defenses very busy, to say the least. Then heading back across into the Ukrainian map today, as part of a grain silo was destroyed in the Poltava region as a result of a Russian missile strike overnight. And as you can see, Russia still have their priorities set to target that wicked evil grain, and more on that shortly. Then moving into Kharkiv, as we saw Russian aviation conduct airstrikes with their Fab Glide munitions into Kupiansk. And do note, the upper limiting range for these Russian Fab 250 or 500 munitions is about 50 kilometers, whereas Patriot air defense systems about 160 kilometers, which I'm sure in many ways could explain why we see really time and time again now Russian aviation fairly regularly dumping their ordnance of this type of munition on Russian grounds, as they're still within Russian skies even. Because the Russian pilots have likely got the official or unofficial memo about Patriot deployment, and are thus literally fearing for their own lives and do not want to get in range of Patriot anti-aircraft PAC-2 missiles. Understandable, really. Then headed south on the map as most recently just south of Bakhmut in Andrivka, so all the way over there. It was reported that the AFU counterattacked and managed to push back Russian troops, and we'll zoom quite in for this one here, back beyond the ponds and reclaim strategic positions across the railway tracks. And Russia has been fighting to consolidate these positions for months now, without any noted success. Then moving right across the map into Kherson, as Krinky has been heating up once again, as it's now just been confirmed by both private and Russian sources that Ukrainian advances in western Krinky have occurred while also gaining further control over the supply lines in the Dnipro and branches towards the left bank. Then moving right down south today to briefly touch on the recent events of Crimea, which is that of the Ukrainian targeted loss of the Russian corvette from about 2 or 3 days ago now, as the wilting down of the Russian Black Sea Fleet demonstrated Ukraine's strength, challenging Moscow's portrayal of invincibility. And do note, by mid-November last year, Ukrainian forces had sunk 15 Russian ships and damaged 12 others. As such, Russia retreated much of its navy for protection, allowing Ukraine to maintain its agricultural exports, even after Russia backed out of a non-aggression pact regarding Ukrainian Black Sea exports from way back in July. And this resilience has been pivotal for Ukraine, allowing them to regain pre-war levels of agricultural and industrial goods exports, despite losing access to the Azov Sea ports and relying solely on the Odessa Oblast ports. For instance, Odessa ports handled 6.3 million metric tons of goods in January 2024 alone, and therefore mirrored pre-invasion figures, which is a significant accomplishment given the wartime environment. Then headed across to some news for today, as Estonia has sent Ukraine a military aid package including Javelin anti-tank missiles and other supplies. The Estonian Defense Ministry confirmed the delivery just yesterday on February 3rd, with the aid valued at over 80 million euros. The package also contains other various guns, vehicles, boats, and other items. Then, in some other interesting hardware news, the Canadian Defense Ministry is considering donating old CRV-7 rockets to Ukraine. And so, currently, Canada is testing to ensure these rockets are safe and effective due to them being in storage since the early 2000s. And the idea is to support Ukraine rather than spend millions in decommissioning these rockets. And in total, Canada has 80 or over 80,000 of these munitions right now, which are actually unguided rockets normally fired from jets or helicopter rocket pods and weighing in at about 7 kilos or about 16 pounds, which would then likely be reused or refitted for use with the AFU drones. Then in some other news, it looks like anti-war presidential candidate for Russia, Boris Nadezhdin, is about to be disqualified from actually running for president for supposed errors in his paperwork. Interesting. And you may remember this candidate, as he was the one getting the hundreds upon thousands of signatures from over 40 regions within Russia as needed to run for the president of Russia. And so, being that people would line up in the cold all over Russia, just waiting for a chance to give their signatures to allow him to run for president, he thus may have actually been seen as one of the few well-known and serious contenders to compete against Putin in the upcoming election next month. Which, with a popular following like this, would have just made things that little bit harder for Putin to engage in his guaranteed election swindling operations, which is something that's widely been accepted globally, even by Russians, as something that Putin orchestrates every election. And so therefore, once again, we see put on display Putin's unwillingness to win in a fair fight against his political opposition. Just him running against a bunch of nobodies. Then moving across to a bit of a quick funny to round it all off today, guys, and admittedly, bit of toilet humor this one. So, new wartime shelters in the Russian Belgorod Oblast have been showing up in what's widely considered quite the karmic return for Russia now. But that's not even the point of this funny. Oh no, because on closer inspection, its users of this shelter seem to feel that they need to add signage to the following effect, stating something like, "Stop defecating in the shelter." Now, the fact that they would even need to request for people to not do something like this would be bad enough, but the embarrassment comes now instead because the public are warned to stop doing it, as if it was some sort of regular occurrence. Oh gee, just keep staying classy, Russia. So thanks again for watching, guys. Yeah, appreciate all the support, the likes, and the comments as always. And yeah, I just can't thank you guys enough. And I do hope to see all of you guys there on the next one. Cheers.